Hello, hello. Happy Monday, and welcome to How to Raise Your Prices and Charge Your Worth. I love this topic. I'm so excited. I think that there are a lot of amazing entrepreneurs out there and many who are undercharging. And so I really want to see those of you watching today charging prices that feel aligned with the value you're providing. I think if you're like many people I talk to when they're early on in their business, especially coaches and consultants, if that happens to be what you do, I hear a lot of like, I'm doing it for free and, for these super low prices. And that's great when you're first practicing and things like that. But a lot of people get stuck there. And so today we want to talk about how do you start to raise your prices, or you may be in a different industry and you want to raise your prices or charge a different price, or make sure you're charging prices that really feel aligned for you. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Go ahead and say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. If you haven't been on these calls with me before, I like to make them super interactive. So I want to make sure I can be answering your questions as we go along here today. Okay, so as you are saying hello, I'm just going to let you know what we're going to cover today: how to overcome any limiting beliefs that keep you from raising your rates, the right time to raise your rates, because charging more isn't always better, and a simple formula to find your happy price so you never get stuck on the question of what to charge again. So there are two main aspects to pricing. One is getting clear on how much to charge, and the other one is having the confidence to ask people to pay you. So even if you're watching the replay, I want you to let me know in the chat, which one do you feel like you struggle with more? You could say one, two, or both. Okay, so one is getting clear on how much to charge. Two is having the confidence to ask people to pay you your rates, or both, right? So let me know which one you feel like you're struggling with more. So the good news is, and let me just see here. Pauline said hello from London. Hi, nice to see you. The great news is that there's no way to charge your worth. So I know that's the name of the video. Because I think a lot of people really like hear that and they're like, yeah, like it makes them go, I need to charge more because I'm worth more. But the truth is, your worth is infinite, and you could never charge an amount that would really fit your worth. Does that make sense? Like, this doesn't have anything to do with your worth, is what I want to share, because you are infinitely worthy. So instead of thinking about it that way, because I think that's where people get hung up, they get hung up on thinking, well, am I worth that? Right? And that's the wrong question. You are worth anything and everything you desire. But pricing is more about what is the value you feel confident in providing at this stage. And that has nothing to do with worthiness. That just has to do with skill, experience, practice, what are your natural gifts? So that's really what we want to look at. So let's take worth out of it and just agree. And maybe you guys can say in the chat here, make a little proclamation to yourselves that I am worthy. Just say, I am worthy in the chat. I am infinitely worthy. And so we can just own that, put it to the side, and then let's talk about pricing, which again has nothing to do with worth. So pricing, there's no one size fits all pricing model. People go, well, what should I charge and how much? And yes, there's I can give my experience, I can give ballparks, but the truth is it's all made up, especially in an industry like coaching. So if you're in an industry like therapy, for example, then yes, there might be more kind of industry standards, regulations, things like that. But in coaching, it's wide open, and in most industries, it's pretty wide open. Even if there's some regulation, things like that. If I go to one doctor versus another doctor, they're going to charge me very differently. So even though it's a regulated industry, there's a huge range. And so, really, truthfully, pricing is made up. And it's all about finding the right price for you and your clients. So, I see more of you jumping in here live. Go ahead and say hello in the chat, so I know where you're tuning in from. And then I'd love to know, are you more looking to get clear on how much to charge today or having the confidence to ask people to pay you? Let me know in the chat so I know how to direct what we're teaching today. So that's the great news. There's no way to charge your worth. You're already infinitely worthy. And there's no one size fits all pricing model. It's all made up. So you have infinite choice in this game that we're talking about here of pricing. Now, the not so great news is that undercharging will lead to not making enough money as a coach, consultant, entrepreneur, whatever it is you do. On the other hand, overcharging will also lead to you not making enough money. So what do I mean by that? Think about that for a minute. If you are charging way less than the value you provide or than fits the client, the target market that you're working with, then it's like if I went to someone and they were charging like, and this is just for me at where I am, if I went to someone and they were charging, I don't know, $50 an hour or $100 an hour, for me, for a coach or a consultant, that would seem like, it would seem suspiciously low almost. I'd be like, they might not have the experience that I need. In fact, I'm almost certain at that level, they wouldn't have the experience that I would need to support me in what I need support with. And so undercharging in that way with it not being a match for me as a client wouldn't really work. On the other hand, if someone was charging, $300,000 a year to work with them, that's there are people investing that, but that's beyond what I would be at the point to invest in. So it's about the right fit of the pricing for your target market, but it's also about like if you're undercharging, if you're doing your sessions for free or for super cheap, then you're not going to be making any money, right? Or very, very little. You're going to have to work with so many people in order to make any money at all, and then you're going to be exhausted. On the other hand, overcharging, so if you if you price your price point so high that people get kind of scared off by it, then again, you're not going to be earning at the level you're capable of. Are you guys following me? Say following in the chat. I like to make these interactive, so I know you guys are like with me. This is landing. So that's the not so great news. So the other thing is with undercharging, people won't get as much value from your work together because think about when you've invested like a very tiny amount in something. Let's say you've bought like an online program or something like that and you paid, I don't know, $20 for an online program or a PDF or something like that online. Now think about like how much value did you get out of that? Did you go in and like treat it like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. I'm going to make sure I spend the time on this. I'm going to really apply what it's teaching me. Or did it maybe sit there on your computer and like kind of collect dust, right? On the other hand, if you invested $2,000 or $10,000 or whatever the price point is for you in a program, how would you show up differently? Let me know in the chat. How would you show up differently if you invested at that high level versus like a very small amount? Would you be more engaged? Would you be, you tell me. So with undercharging and overcharging too, there's also like how your clients show up for the process and how they get results as a result of people. There's a great line one of my coaches told me years ago, which is people are invested in what they invest in. So if they make an investment, if it feels like a real investment, then they are more invested. They get better results. So let me know in the chat, do you feel like you are undercharging right now or overcharging? Just type either undercharging or overcharging in the chat so we can do some coaching around that. So like Goldilocks, right? You want to choose the price that is just right. And I want to really make a point here that you don't need to jump to super high ticket pricing right away. A lot of times, especially I work with a lot of coaches and consultants and other service-based business owners, and there's a lot of talk about high ticket. And I love high ticket. I'm a big fan for many, many reasons that I don't have time to go into right now. But I will say that I'm a stand for high ticket and high value. The value needs to exceed the price that you're charging for you to charge that price, right? People need to feel like, wow, I'm getting so much out of this. I'm currently re-recording my business coaching program, my kind of entry-level business coaching program, and it is so rich. I'm like, this is 5 years, I mean, probably really 10 years, my entire time being an entrepreneur of experience and learning and applying what it takes to get to six figures or even multiple six figures with, warm network strategies, not getting out there doing all this complicated, fancy online marketing, but how do you really build a business from, A to Z, especially again, coaching, consulting, and service-based, heart-based service, heartful service-based businesses. But like, there's so much good stuff in there. It is the people who have followed this program step by step, they're thriving. They're making, $5,000, $10,000 a month in their businesses. And so when I go and I charge, I think the price point is around 3K for this program to do it live, it's like, oh my God, the value. They can make that back like in 1 month, no problem, right? And multiples of that back in 1 month. And so the value I can stand behind going, this is incredible. So right now, are you undercharging or overcharging? Let me know in the chat. Okay, so you don't need to jump to super high ticket right away. You can increase over time. So I started out in my first business, which was an online marketing business. I was charging $25 an hour for my billable time, and so not very much. Um, and I was working like 60 to 70 hours a week a lot of the time. And so, I was making decent money, but I was exhausted. And so what I started doing is as I got more clients, I would increase my prices and I would increase them like step by step. And so that's the thing is you guys can, if you want to increase your prices, you can do it step by step. I'll talk more about that in a little while. By the time I left that business, about 5, 6 years later, I was making $250 an hour. So big jump, right? 10x what I was making when I started. But I didn't like just jump up to $250 overnight. My experience, my portfolio, my referrals, all of that really supported that increase in income over time. So you can grow your prices over time. My first program in coaching, I jumped in at a much higher level because I had, almost a decade of entrepreneurship under my belt. You know, I had been running this other business full time for years. I had a lot of coaching experience. And so I created a program. My first ever coaching program was $5,000 for a 5-month group program. And I could really stand in the value of that, right? And now my pricing ranges from, around 3K, as I mentioned, for a live group program, all the way up to 25K and beyond. But it's taken some time to get here and to feel confident in charging those rates. So let's see. What do I want to say here? So that's a little bit about basically you don't want to undercharge, you don't want to overcharge, you want to find that Goldilocks place for you. There is no Goldilocks for everyone in the world. It is for you around the price that is just right. And you can increase those prices incrementally over time. The other side is how to overcome the limiting beliefs that keep you from raising your rates. So let's talk a little bit about this. What are some of the fears and doubts that show up for you around raising your rates? Go ahead and write them in the chat. So the important thing here is to understand, and by the way, it might not be just around raising your rates. It might just be around asking someone to pay you in the first place. So whatever it is that you're hesitating to do right now, go ahead and write that down. Write down what is the fear, what is the belief, what is it that comes up? Like, oh, people will never pay that, or oh, I don't know if I can deliver on that, or I don't know, what are some fears or doubts that you might have, right? So go ahead and type those in the chat. And then what you want to do is you want to first identify your fears, and then we want to see, like, we want to walk through those and go, can I be okay if this happens? Like, if I ask someone to pay me at this rate and they say no, will I just be like, will I fall apart and be devastated and not be able to continue on? Or can I go pick myself up, go, okay, I still feel like this is the right rate for me. I've come to that this is the right rate, and I'm going to keep going. Now, all you can do is test it, right? So you go out with a rate and you charge that for a little while and you see if you get 10 no's, then there's one of two things happening. Either the rate is wrong, you're going for the, well, one of probably three things happening. The rate is wrong, you're going for the wrong target market who can't afford your rates, or you need some sales training. And it might be all three, by the way. So I want to touch briefly on sales. Sales is super important, and I don't even like to use the word sales anymore because people get so like, oh, I don't even want to think about that. So I call it the art of the invitation. Making invitations is so important. I just saw a post the other day that I thought was great by this coach, and she was like, how do you sell more of your program? Like, sell more of your program, like post about it, tell people it's happening. She's like, people undersell themselves in that way. And I venture to agree from coaching many, many people over the years is people just don't ask. They don't make invitations. They don't ask someone to come to a breakthrough call with them. They don't ask someone in the breakthrough call to work with them. And they do so little of that. You know, they'll be like, okay, well, I had one breakthrough call and I asked her and she said no, so I don't think it's going to work. And it's like, listen, you probably need to do at least 10 of those before we know. And in those, you need to ask them, you know, if they're interested in working with you. Once you've done 10 and you've made the invitation, and if you have the, you know, this some skills behind what you're doing in a framework, then we can talk about whether it's working or not, or if we need to adjust pricing. So a lot of it comes down to your, call it sales ability, or your training in that arena. That is going to be huge in terms of your success in business. In any kind of service-based business, you're selling yourself, right? And to some degree. So if you're having any kind of conversations with people in your business, then it's super, super important to gain some comfortability there and really have a framework, an approach that you take that feels very authentic, but also gets you the result. Okay. I go a lot deeper into that in my business coaching program I was talking about earlier. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little bit. But first, let's talk about a simple formula to find your happy price so you never get stuck on the question of what to charge again. So, when we're talking about pricing, there's a great article. You can Google it. I want to give credit to Michael Ellsberg, who wrote the article, and it's called Your Happy Price versus Your Sad Price. I think it's like How to Charge a Price That Motivates You or something like that. It's on Forbes by Michael Ellsberg. And just read that article. And it talks about, Judy says breakthrough calls. What do you mean by breakthrough calls, Judy? Is that a question, or let me know what you're saying there. I'd be happy to answer your question. So the article talks about how do you find the pricing that's right for you, and I love his approach, and it is kind of the foundation of how I teach pricing before we get into the more specifics. Is there's a price point at which it's like, if you're a coach, let's say, and I ask you, let's just start with like an hourly price. So for an hour of coaching, how does it feel to you to charge $50? Does that feel like really good? Does it feel exciting? Does it feel like meh? You kind of get like that, meh, whatever, right? So you tell me, those of you watching, how does it feel to charge $50 an hour for your coaching? For some of you, it might be like, yeah, that feels good. That feels perfect right now. For some of you, it might be like, meh. So based on that response, you know, is that your happy price or not, right? If you're getting like a meh, then you need to go a little bit up. So then let's say, okay, what about $100 an hour? How does that feel? Yeah, okay, that feels pretty good. Great, then that might be your happy price. So your happy price is like, it's the lowest number at which you feel happy to do the service, to offer the service. If it feels like, I mean, yeah, it feels great, but it also feels like terrifying and I don't know and then that might not be your happy price. We might need to bump it back down again, maybe to $75 an hour. Now, I don't recommend charging hourly, by the way. I'm just using this as an example. I usually charge by the package, and I talk more about that in my program and how do you actually come up with your pricing. But that's just an example for you, is like you want to find that price at which you feel happy to offer the service, but not like, oh, that's, you know, it's like too scary to charge that number. You want to feel like you can own it. And I'll give you an example. I just had a call I just was Voxering the other day with one of my clients, And she's in our mastermind program. So we have a high level program for women, entrepreneurs all over the world. It's called Wealthy World Changers. And I lead it along with my mentor and business partner, Gigi Sage. And we have an amazing group of women in that program. And so one of them reached out to me and she said, listen, I raised my rates recently to, X. And I, but I'm going out and I'm starting to tell people, that I'm going to be charging this. And I feel like, I don't know, I just don't, I feel nervous. It doesn't feel like it's flowing. And I said, listen, she raised her rates by, let's say, $1,000 for her package. So she's charging $1,000 more than she was previously. And I said, maybe that's too high. Like, what if you just jumped up by $500 to start? And can you really own that? Like, what's the price that feels like you can really get behind it and the value of it? And she said, okay. And she went out there and she immediately sold a package, or maybe even like 2 packages at the price that she came up with because it was her happy price. Are you guys still following me? Say following in the chat. I'm getting like very few comments today. Some days I get so many, some days I get so few. So I would love to have a little engagement here. Let me know. And then Judy, did you have a question? Because you said breakthrough calls. I just want to make sure I can answer your question there. So that's the formula basically. And you can read the article to learn more. And then in my business coaching program, we go much more in depth because, like I said, you don't want to charge hourly in most cases. There's no, again, rules around that. It's just my experience. And so I go much more in depth into, well, I'll tell you about that in just a minute. Let's cover one more thing first, which is when is the right time to raise your rates? So charging more, like we said, isn't always better. And so basically the right time to raise your rates is when you're no longer charging your happy price, when you're charging at a level for a while and then you go, like you start to feel like, I don't know if I don't want to sign another client at that rate, right? Oh, now the comments are coming through. I love it. Okay, perfect. What do you mean by breakthrough? Judy, are you asking about the breakthrough call? Yeah, so and again, my approach to sales, or what I call the art of the invitation, is I teach a process that you take people through if they're curious about working with you. This is a process that any of you would go through if you're coming into any of my like private coaching or anything like that. Which is first you have like an initial call with someone, which is more of like a connection call, I would call it, which is like to connect with them, get a little bit like of information about what they're struggling with, what they want. So that's more of a connection call to see is there resonance on both sides. But there's nothing for sale on that initial call, typically. So you're not selling anything. It's just like getting to know each other. That's what some people call like a discovery session. But I don't actually sell on that call. That's a connection call. The second call that I teach is more of a breakthrough call, and this is I actually teach. I don't know what your industry is, Judy. Are you? You can tell me in the chat here. Are you a coach, consultant, other kind of business owner? So breakthrough call is where you lead people through. So I have like a script you can follow, or an outline basically, to take people through a really transformative process in this call. It's usually like a 90-minute, sometimes even 2-hour call. And in that, they have such a transformation and a turning point that they can see what it is like to work with you. They get so much clarity, and then they can choose, then you can offer, like, do you want to continue basically and continue our work together? So that would be the enrollment call, or what I like to call the breakthrough call. So that's what I was talking about there is doing those breakthrough calls, and then on those calls making the invitation to work with you. So if you've done 10 of those calls and you've made the invitation to 10 people and they've all said no, then we know that something needs to shift there, either with your target market, your pricing, or maybe we need to tweak and continue practicing on that call. Does that make sense? Let me know. So that's part of my process that I call the art of the invitation, which is a really like authentic way to enroll people that doesn't feel pushy or salesy at any point, because you're leading out with so much service first. Sarah says, I feel like I'm okay with my pricing, but here to learn something new. Awesome, Sarah. Do you have any specific questions that I can cover? Because we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. So I want to make sure that I can cover everything that is going to support you all that are on here live. Okay, so the right time to raise your rates is when you're no longer working at your happy price. You feel like you feeling a little resentful, or you're just feeling like you're slammed. Sometimes that's it. Like when your roster is full, that's often for me is, when I'm full with clients, I can't take on any more. People are still wanting to work with me, then I will raise my rates at that point because it makes sense. There's more demand than there is supply, so to speak. And so at that point, I would raise my rates. Um, so I'd love to know what questions you guys have. So we covered a lot already. We've covered that there's no way to charge your worth. You're already infinitely worthy. There's no one size fits all pricing. It's all made up. We talked about why undercharging and overcharging for your services will both result in not making enough money. So you really want to find that Goldilocks spot, that Goldilocks pricing. And we talked about your happy price and that approach to pricing. And then a little bit about overcoming those limiting beliefs. We didn't go super deep into limiting beliefs because that's like a whole other call that I could do. I mean, I go very in depth into this in the business coaching program I was talking about. And the reason I'm not calling it by name is because I'm not sure yet. I'm re-recording it right now, and I don't know yet if I'm going to still call it the business boot camp or call it something else. But let me just touch on that briefly for 1 minute, and then I'll come back to your question, Sarah. So in that business coaching program, we have the entire first module is mindset. And this is so important because there's a mindset of a thriving entrepreneur, right? And so there's many aspects to this. There's like the ups and downs emotionally of entrepreneurship. There's money mindset, which is a huge part of everything, which is like just your relationship to money. Do you have like a great relationship with money? You feel abundant, you feel supported by money, or do you feel like there's never enough and you're always, struggling to pay your bills and money's never there for you? Like, what is your relationship to money? And believe me, it has nothing to do with how much money you have. In my experience, if you have a certain relationship with money, even if you start making way more money, that relationship doesn't change on its own. We have to get in and do the mindset work to shift it. And you can go ahead and do that at whatever stage you're at now. So it actually helps you earn more. So it's super important. We go really deep into the fears and resistance around sales or around making invitations, because that's a big, big piece. I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10, when I talk to a business owner that's not earning at the level that they're capable of, or they want to be earning, it's because they are not making enough invitations, or they have some kind of mindset thing going on there that they are not putting themselves out there enough. So it's not actually that they're not good enough or that their pricing is wrong or any of these other things. It's a mindset thing. And so this is a huge, huge part of the program. And then of course we go into all kinds of things, that you need. So everything from how to, package yourself, price yourself, what are your unique gifts, into, like I said, the art of the invitation. What's your client cultivation funnel? How do people go from like first hearing about you to wanting to work with you and signing up to work with you? A lot of people try to have you ever heard the saying, like, asking somebody to marry you on a first date? That's kind of what a lot of business owners are doing. They're like, hey, we just connected. Now let's get married. Why don't you sign up for my services, right? But instead, you want to have a process. People need to get warmed up a little. They need to get to know you a little. So figuring out what that client cultivation process is for you, and then talking about the different marketing approaches that you can take for your business so you can find the right one for you. There's no one size fits all, and doing it without a bunch of complicated online marketing. So I do not teach ads. I do not teach like funnels. I know how to do a lot of that stuff, but in my experience, it doesn't work for a lot of people. The people that come and want to work with us are people who want a simple, authentic, warm network approach where they can get out and speak, or they can get out and host little events in their home, or do some organic posts on social media and then have those people come in and become clients. Like really simple, connective, no frills marketing that really, really works. And then we go a lot more into pricing, how to structure payment plans versus pay in full, how to go about raising your rates when people are still paying the old pricing. So much, much deeper. So if you're curious about any of that, type boot camp in the chat and make sure you have friend requested me, because if we're not friends on Facebook, I will not be able to message you, and I'll put you on a wait list for that program. Okay, Sarah, I want to answer your question. How often should I be raising my prices? I'm an esthetician. So same thing. Are you fully booked out? Let me see. My business is located in a wealthy area, but my business demographic is mainly middle class millennials. I have a fear of raising my prices and losing all my clients, but I want to invite the people in my neighborhood. Um, yes. Okay, great, Judy. Make sure we're friends on Facebook. It doesn't look like we are. I'm going to send you a friend request right now. Make sure you accept that, otherwise, I won't be able to message you, okay? So, Sarah, it's a good question. Are you fully booked out? Is my first question. If the answer is no, then you have to see. Maybe you go out with your current prices to start. Why not? Because then you want to get fully booked out first, right? So you can always raise your rates later, but you could get people in at your current pricing, even the wealthier people in your neighborhood. Or if that really doesn't feel good to you, then what you can do is just go ahead and raise your rates for new clients, and keep your old clients at the old rates for a certain amount of time. So that's what I'll often do is I'll raise my rates for new clients, but keep old clients at the old rate for a while and then start booking up. And then at some point, go back to my old clients and say, listen, I've been charging at these rates for a while. I do need to increase. Maybe I don't increase them all the way right away, but I kind of like step them up bit by bit. So you're doing it in such a way that you're not losing business. Does that make sense, Sarah? So that's probably what I would do is I would either go out at your current rates and book yourself out and then start raising your rates, or I would go out, raise your rates a bit for new clients. That way you can, and just do it bit by bit. You don't have to like make a huge jump, but raise your rates for new clients a bit, and then slowly you can kind of bring your other clients up to speed. So I think that's probably the way to approach it. Awesome. I'm so glad that helped. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Anna. Thanks for tuning in and letting me know you loved the boot camp. Yeah, so great to have you in it. And I'm super excited to reveal it, share it with the world here soon. I'm working hard, re-recording it. It's going to be epic. I even have everything in there. Like we have a whole bonus module. It's a 12 module program. And I'm going to run it live starting in early April is the plan. But I even like, there's so much good stuff in those 12 modules. And I even created an entire bonus module, which is like all the business fundamentals, right? Like contracts and if you're in more of like coaching, consulting, anything like that, then we're going to cover like the welcome email and by the way, you can modify any of this even if you're not a coach or consultant. So I work with a lot of coaches and consultants, which is why I kind of talk about that the most. But I have people who've gone through this program who are interior designers, photographers, therapists, like all different kinds of hairstylists, like all different kinds of business owners, service-based business owners, and then they modify for their business, right? They take on all the mindset stuff, they do all of that, and then like for example, my interior designer that I worked with, we came up with her own version of the kind of breakthrough call, and I think we called it a vision. I can't remember. It was like a design vision call or something. And then it was great. And people had never had an experience like that with an interior designer to like really map out like their vision. And she did really, really well with that. So not just for coaches and consultants, though I do talk about that a lot. Okay, great to see you all. I'll see you all next week. We'll be doing these weekly on Mondays. So see you then.